Hey now.
Howdy, howdy.
I'm assuming that must be Tammy. If that's you, Tammy, welcome. We're really glad that you're here.
It says Chad.
Yeah? Oh, was it? I'm sorry. Chad, you always, every time I see that, I immediately think it's Bobby, which I get it, but I got to make a mental note. I'm sorry, Chad.
You're looking
Glad
at a
to have
vid.
you
He's a visual person.
I am, man. I will bite on that. I'm like a big mouth bass, good lure.
So it must drive you crazy when there's couples that have the exact same profile picture.
Yes.
Because then you're like, I don't know which one this
Yeah,
is.
who are you? So.
It did throw me off for a while when I married Sarah and she changed her name because I was so used to all the S Slinkard just being my mom because it was just Susan Slinkard forever. So
Right.
I kept seeing like Sarah post stuff and thinking it was my mom. It was very bizarre. I like our leafy background. Maybe that's those look like palm trees a little bit.
That is correct. Why? Because on Sunday.
Palm Sunday. We're gonna do our communion Palm Sunday.
We are. And
You can.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, obviously, we'd love for you to join us, but if you're not with us physically, then you can join in. Just make sure you have your own elements.
That's
Any
correct.
anything can be used. We use grape juice and gluten-free cracker, but I think my brother at one point used water and a pork crackling. So I mean, you use what you got.
Yes, it is. It is the attitude of the heart that matters. So look at Grant. Word up, Grant.
This silly kid. Good morning. He's the goofiest kid.
Hey.
He told me a joke earlier today. He said, "Josh, have you seen the movie Constipation?" And I said, "No, Grant, I haven't." And he said, "That's because it hasn't come out yet."
Hey, that's not bad.
He's always got something.
That's dad joke, and it's I don't know. That
Yeah.
might be church approved. So that's
Somebody told you a joke earlier, but we can't repeat it on air.
No, I don't even really want to remember it. Truthfully,
Hey, you can't. You're not liable for what people tell you.
I know, but I don't know. I really try to coach people. I don't have any control over what but just think about it when you bring it to me because we may not have the same anyway. So
It's in your brain. You can't get it out.
no, can't get it out. So anywho's, but it was a good day. We had a great day on campus. Had a great meeting with some folks that are looking to invest their time and their talents here on campus over the next couple of weeks. And man, I'm just excited about that. I absolutely love when people can combine what they love to do and in giving it to the Lord. It's just the best. It's just the best. So I'm excited about that. Really am. And getting ready for Sunday, of course, we'll have an abbreviated message. We will not continue our look at Nebuchadnezzar for, I guess, a couple of weeks. So we're going to have an abbreviated message, but it is going to be on the topic of the communion. So we're going to look into Matthew and talk a little bit. The title of this Sunday is the Call of Communion. What does it call it to? So I'm looking forward to that. Communion is much like Christmas. It needs to be taught on because we need a reminder, and then we need a primer for those that might be new in the faith. But you don't want to show the same painting over and over and over. So you want to find it try to give it some nuance and some difference. So we'll do that.
When was the last time we had in-person communion? It's been quite a while,
Christmas
hasn't
a
it?
year ago. Because
Yeah.
Christmas of 19.
It's nuts. I hope those crackers are still good.
Well, they've been in the freezer, so surely. It's just the juice. It may be a little fermented. It may be a little over.
It might be the kind of juice they drank back in the day. Back in Juice's day.
I always love, the argument. It's always someone who's, when they say that the wine, that they drank was not fermented. Well, it was wine. Now, needless to say, it wasn't refined for effect,
sure,
like modern day, but it was wine, and it did have a medicinal value because it helped, to keep parasites and stuff down because they didn't have the the filtration and the purification that we enjoy today. So
yeah, I mean, O'Doul's wasn't making wine back then.
No, not at all. I remember first time I was in Jamaica, I was with a church, and we were taking communion, and they call it bread service there, and they're passing around, the elements. Well, the wine was real wine, and it was real cheap. It was, but
see, if we called it bread service, we'd have some real angry people because they'd be thinking they're getting a meal.
Right. Yeah, but they call it bread service, which I always thought that's pretty cool. I like that. So
Viviana, she's late. Yeah, you are late.
Man, she is way late.
For you, see, if you're late all the time, then people don't notice. But if you're early all the time and then you're late.
So I was informed that Sunday I made Miss Viviana giggle.
Oh.
Because she had never heard the phrase "snitches get stitches."
Mm.
And now what? I wasn't completely confident in going with that statement, but obviously I committed to it, So, those guys were just tattletales. They go and tattle on them and, try to get the guys in trouble. Well, they did get him in trouble, actually. One of the things, well, I'm going to save that for later because I've made an observation that I haven't ever really thought of.
Nice.
And so,
the old Snitches Get Stitches, that our friend Andrew Penland, his band, had a song called Snitches Get Stitches.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guitarists, Felix, when they'd play it, he had it it was hashtag Snitches. Oh, no, his was a different hashtag. But yeah, anyway, they've had, that's a pretty popular phrase. You'd think Viviana would have heard it by now.
Well, Viviana's such a good, wholesome person. She
heard it. She just never thought she'd see it in church.
Well, you and probably everybody else. But that's the beauty, I mean, I promise you, you never saw, what statues are the tallest, those sort of things. I mean, sometimes I giggle in my head because I wonder if there's someone going, well, that's ridiculous. But
well, we got a lot of UrbanDictionary.com going on at our church. Let's just say that we've had our fair amount of phrases and allusions.
Right, and you never know. I mean, I do teach in levels, and you got to stay on board because there may be something in there just for you. So there really is a lot going on behind that curtain. It's a joy. It really is. So, But I'm looking for it. Sunday was awesome, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Really enjoyed the worship service. The music was a great selection, and it was nice to see a little more full crowd. And we had some guests. We had a really large family with us, and I hope that they enjoyed it. I got to meet the husband. I shook all their hands, but I didn't get to know anything about them. So hopefully they enjoyed their time.
We had a lot of kids that had a great time at the children's church with the kind of Awana stuff that they had going on there, and Melinda, she had it all decked out in St. Patrick's Day colors and stuff. So they had I know my kids had a blast. So it looked like they were all having. They kept going. They were going after. I'm going in there to get them. Church is over. They're still going on.
Yeah, I think it was you that told me that they were. It was a nice crowd in there too.
Yeah, they were packed. It was full of kids. So it was a good time.
Well, it is. I love our campus, and I love working here. It's beautiful to be here during the week when it's quiet. It's its own beauty. But man, I have really missed just the the hustle and bustle of people and hearing kids and things. It was great. Sunday was great.
Yeah, especially on Wednesday nights when it starts staying light later. You know, just used to having people on campus. Which to speak to talk about that, Jimmy and Jeff and I are in after conversation about this summer. We plan to have events and activities this summer, so hopefully y'all can kind of start putting those on the calendar. We know we have For the City was officially announced.
Correct.
The dates for that is the first week in June. I don't remember the dates offhand, but it should be the Wednesday through the Saturday, I guess.
I actually just put that in our announcement slides.
There you go.
So that would be June 2 through June 5.
Yep, June 2nd through the 5th. So just put that on the calendar. Cindy says Sunday with the kids was great. Did you see Cindy's post today? She said she spent the first half of the day doing yard work, and then she was grilling. It looked like she was making some yummy skewers of meat and veggies.
I tell you,
that retired life, man.
I saw that and I thought, man, I wish one of those would fly by my office.
Hey, she's known to do a drop by.
I know.
Food.
That's the thing is, anything she puts on Facebook, I think I might get some of that. Because she made those kebabs. I think that was what we had for the meeting last Sunday, which was awesome. It was a great meeting. It was great being together. Or I guess it was a Sunday week ago now.
Yeah.
And the food, it felt normal.
Yeah.
The food was delicious, and we were able to sit and just be together and talk, and it was really nice. And I've missed it.
It's funny because I was in Dr. Brooks' class yesterday. He was talking about an Israelite celebration and how they had to sacrifice some food. And he said, you don't have celebrations even today without food. You think of any celebration, whether it's a birthday or it's a holiday, there's always food involved, sometimes specialized food for that occasion. It is interesting the connection that, I guess all cultures probably do, but at least ours does with celebrations and food. Sure.
No hint. I just want you to know, when I see it, I think, I'm not fishing. It's a compliment there. And a good evening to our friend from Oklahoma. We have another friend up there that you might want to avoid at all costs.
Yeah, I was about to say, probably our best friend in Oklahoma.
Yeah, he's in the Norman area, so maybe you're safe. But welcome.
Yeah, stay out of the zone.
I'm missing our Georgian. Is he working late tonight, you think?
Could be.
Maybe?
Could be. Yeah, you never know with him. Or he might be out walking. I think they opened I know they're supposed to open that park a little later, so he's hoping to get back to walking like he was. So we'll see.
Well, he needs to do his walking from 5 to 6. Or from 7 to 8.
Well, this is 7 to 8 his time, so...
Okay, well, adjusted. He needs to
yeah, he can walk earlier.
Yeah.
Get home by 7, and he'll be ready to... It was weird because when we went out west this year, we were in Pacific, and he's in Eastern, and so I was texting him, and I was like, we're 4 hours difference, which is just insane.
Right, crazy.
To think about. Do away with daylight savings. Oh, she's a Boomer Sooner girl. She's a Norman fan.
Well, of course.
Well, you could be Stillwater. You could be OK State.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, she's an undercover agent.
But she likes
Stillwater.
I'm just saying, if you're in, if I don't know where she's at, but if you're in Stillwater, then it's
so go ahead.
I was just saying, it's it's like people think Texas, they just assume I'm a Longhorn fan. I'm like, no, I'm an Aggie. There's lots of us who just don't love the mediocrity that is UT.
Well, they did get bounced.
They sure did.
And you know what? I got to tell you, I love the David and Goliath, even if it's I mean, that's just the best. More power to them. So I had a chance to go and visit with our buddy truck driver Jimmy Sunday afternoon.
That's right.
He has been green lighted. Everything is G&O for his shoulder replacement on Thursday morning.
So is that tomorrow morning?
Yes, tomorrow. My week still gets so jacked up.
I know.
I don't know. Maybe we'll get. I don't know. So anyway, but he's ready. He's excited, but he's a little. And I told him that was perfectly normal. It's okay. So
what do you always say? Minor surgery is what they do on other people.
That's right. He said, he was a little scared. I said, well, that's perfectly natural. And he goes, well, what if I don't wake up? I said, well, first, for those that lose their life under anesthesia, the number is minuscule. I mean, minuscule. Second, I said, if that should happen, I will preach your funeral like nobody's business. And third, if you close your eyes to the anesthesiologist and you open them Jesus,
it's not a bad trade.
Hey, this is a wonderful place, but it's not heaven.
Amen.
So I hope he says, man, how do you always know what to say? I said, well, I don't know. You just keep flinging till it sticks. So
you got practice. All right. Let me get this off and turn my mic volume down so I don't blow everybody out. Oh. And stuff's popping up on my computer, of course, as I try to do this. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Now I'm ready. Spring arise to heal the ground, and from wherever searching comes the look itself, a trace of what we're looking for. So be quiet now and wait. The ocean is growing, tide is coming in, here it is. And here is our King, here is our love, here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus. And He is our King, He is our love, He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. One, He is Jesus. What was said to the rose to make it unfold was said to me here in my chest. So be quiet now and rest. So be quiet now and rest. Ocean is growing, the tide is coming in, here it is. And here is our King, here is our love, here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus. And He is our King, our love, He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus, Jesus, majesty, finally, here is our King, here is our love, here is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the one, He is Jesus, and He is our King, He is our love, He is our God who's come to bring us back to Him. He is the appropriate one to do this time of year with talking about spring and flowers and all that. This next one I've got is our hymn for Buddy and everybody else out there who loves the hymns. This is one of my favorites.
Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. He took my sins and my sorrows, he made them his very own, and he bore the burden to Calvary and suffered and died alone, and with the ransomed in glory his face I at last shall see. 'Twill be my joy through the ages to sing of his love for me, singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. Singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.
Amen. All right, we got one more before Jimmy comes back. This one's From the Inside Out.
Thousand times I failed, still your mercy remains. Should I stumble again, still I'm caught in your grace everlasting. Your light will shine when all else fades, never ending. Your glory goes beyond all fame. Your will above all else, my purpose remains. The art of losing myself in bringing you praise everlasting. Your light will shine when all else fades, never ending. Your glory goes beyond all fame. In my heart and my soul, Lord, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. Your will above all else, my purpose remains. The art of losing myself
So, Josh, you said we're looking at some rain tonight. Is that true?
Yeah, we're under a severe thunderstorm watch.
Well, I'm seeing the front of it over there, so
Batten down the hatches.
I'm telling you, yeah, maybe they'll get here just in time for me to have to go to my car. That would be spectacular. So, well, we continued our look at Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar, and we stepped into the chapter that introduces us to the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I have to admit, it's one of my favorite encounters of the Bible. You learn it young, if you grow up in church, and it's a simple story, but it's also a powerful story when we take time to really take it in. It's kind of like this may make me a little weird, but I'm the type of guy, when you get a really good T-bone steak, you might, just suck on the bone just a little bit because it
or those ribs when you get those really good ribs.
Oh man, yeah. My mom always made us. You had to eat as much as you could before you could pick it up, but I always left a little.
Oh yeah,
so I could pick that thing up. But it's such a great teaching moment, and I've enjoyed kind of swimming around in it a little bit. So if you recall, in the chapter that precedes us, he had a dream. He made a threat of murder, and the Lord delivered through Daniel the information and the interpretation of the dream. And we saw that in that moment, Daniel had a passing, fleeting moment of clarity. There wasn't repentance; it was recognition. And we talked
Nebuchadnezzar.
about that. What's that?
Nebuchadnezzar. You said Daniel, but I know you mean Nebuchadnezzar. Yep. I was like, Daniel had a
listen
passing moment of clarity.
Yeah, for our new folks, you need to listen to what I mean, not always what I say. So we see this. He's touched by the power and the majesty of God and the mystery of God, and Daniel, interprets this dream where the gold head, is his kingdom, and it's the greatest kingdom. Now that really says a lot because I know probably more about the Roman Empire than I do the others, but that's really a pretty bold statement given what the Romans did. And so we see this moment of humility and smallness, but it doesn't last. That's the thing about being a human, is feelings are fleeting.
Right.
And if we're not careful, and if we fall into the prey of living our lives by emotion, they're fleeting and they're fragile. And sometimes the Bible says they're liars.
Yeah. What
we feel isn't necessarily the truth. It's our perception of the truth, but it may not be the truth. And so the timeline of Daniel tells us that between the interpretation of the statue dream to the king and the erection of this 90-foot statue is approximately 20 years.
Mm.
So he got after this pretty quickly because it may not have taken 20 years to build, but it would have taken time to assemble, all that you needed. Now, some people say that the statue was solid gold. I have a hard time believing that because I don't even know how you could lift that weight.
Yeah, wouldn't you have to cast it? How would you? I don't know. Don't get me started. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, that
thing would weigh so much.
So there's I can't remember what I've seen the video somewhere. I think it's in England. There's this plexiglass box with a gold brick in it, and they will give you the brick if you can get it out.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
And it's fun to watch, right? So, because a gold brick is, I wonder, what that weighs right off the top of my head. It's heavy. And so 90 pounds of gold, 90 feet by 9 feet of gold would be
Hey,
So,
a brick of gold weighs 27.5 pounds.
okay. So you just extrapolate that. So was it a solid gold statue? I don't think so. But we do know it had gold overlay and all that they took. So, the disappointing thing here is that Nebuchadnezzar went from this encounter that mystified and humbled, and soon thereafter he begins this project. And so, we talked Sunday about the whys of the project. Some said it was in honor of his father. Well, that's not the case, because it rains here.
Yeah.
And that it was a tribute to the Babylonian god. We know that's not the case. This is a twofold action. One, it's massive ego. When you think statues in that time and throughout a lot of our history was really the only way a person could live on after their time. We see some of the great statues and some of the great buildings. Those are the things that live on from those times. And so we see his ego get involved, and I can't imagine the expense and all those things. But greater than that, it really was a prideful rebellion against, the God who had given him the information, because God had told him, you have authority over all the earth because I gave it to you. And yours is the greatest, and yours is the gold head of the statue. And ego got the best of him, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, he was at first, when that moment where he had to he found humility for a minute. He was in the midst of a crisis, and there's a famous pastor, I can't remember who off the top of my head, but I know he's a famous pastor who said that crisis may cause you to consider God, but that only conviction will cause you to remain with Him. And
I like that.
Yeah,
I
don't know who said that, but clearly it's so true. I mean, Nebuchadnezzar, as powerful as he was, he's just a man. He's a sinner, and so he gets through that crisis and he starts feeling good again, and then however many years go by, 5, 10, whatever, and he goes, you know what? Not only am I the head of the statue, if I'm the head of this statue, I should build a statue, and it should be about me. And yeah, I think ego got a bit ahead of him, and I also think that this might be, like you said, a rebellion to kind of stick it to God a little bit and go, if I'm this, you say I'm this statue and blah blah blah. Well, I'll build a statue, and then I'm going to have him worship that statue, and we'll see what happens.
I won't be just the head of the statue. I'll be the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting in the modern context, as pastors, I'll pick on us. As pastors, we need to be very careful, because ego doesn't stop, when God calls you to ministry.
Right.
We all have ego to a certain degree. Now, my personality, I'm a sanguine personality, which means I am high ego. And I'm the guy that tends to gravitate towards the spotlight. That's just my personality. And so I have to be very careful about that. And I can say I think the Lord has stitched into my life some stop gaps, as it were. But if we're not careful, we can find ourselves buying into our own press as pastors and as ministers. What do you think some of the pitfalls of pride could be for us as ministers?
Well, I think, a lot of times people kind of put, whether the pastors and ministers intend them to do or not, it's very easy to put pastors and ministers on a pedestal, because unfortunately, through somewhat of Christian history, you've got the Pope and all these other people. Well, the Bible teaches that there is no difference in worthiness or honor between, you, me, and just whatever, a regular churchgoer. There is a difference in responsibility. There is a difference in accountability. But there is no difference we're not better Christians. We just have different roles. But I think it is natural for the congregation to kind of put the pastor on a pedestal. And if he's not careful, the pastor, what do you put on pedestals? Statues? You know what I mean? And so if you're not careful, it can be pretty easy to get a big head. And you and I both know the history is full of pastors who have let it get to them. and who have made a mistake or had some pride or whatever, and then seeing their entire ministry just crumble because they got their ego got too big.
Yeah, just you start reading your own press, and it can be very dangerous. But so we I think this was ego more than anything, but I believe it did also have a very real, intentional purpose as well. We talked about this statue kind of being a central unifier of all the people groups that they have captured and relocated. They're trying to transition them into being Babylonian.
Right.
And this was going to be kind of the central, what we all are around. And so, his ego was out of check, but he was very intentional and very wise because he had removed them from their country, so they didn't have a territorial familiarity. He was in the process of removing them from their language. It's the reason he renamed Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as he gave them, those names. He removed them from their culture, what they did, what they held important, the way they did things. And then lastly, this is the removing of their religion. Mm-hmm. And this is a time-tested, proven way to demoralize, to program, and to take over not only a people group, but in time perhaps an entire nation.
I mean, it's miraculous when you think about it that the Israelites, and we know it's like the two, Judah and Benjamin, who's left over, they get taken to Babylon. Then they come back, starting 70 years later, and after that, the fact that no other culture does that. I mean, the Babylonians take over a culture, and they take all their best back to Babylon, and they re-educate them and rename them and get them to intermarry, and that people just becomes part of the Babylonians. I mean, the fact that the Jewish people kept their religion, kept their culture, kept their intermarriage, all those kind of things, so that they could go back and reestablish. Caleb and I were talking about this, about how the nation of Israel is then reestablished after World War II. And I said there is no people group on earth that are so tied to the land, because God gave it to them, as the Jewish people. And I think, basically they've been through so much oppression and so much hatred and the Holocaust and all that. I think as long as there's a religious Jewish person alive, they're going to hold on to that land. I mean, it's just insane to me.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. And so, we see this, and there, like I said, there's pride, there's a process, but I believe there was also a plan. One was to reinforce to his leaders what was expected from them.
Right.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were in a leadership status. Daniel was in a leadership status. So, that's what they would do, is they would bring in the brightest and best, and they would begin to indoctrinate them. And part of that was giving them part ownership of their home.
Right.
And so he was reinforcing to them not only who was king or who they served, but where their position was in light of him. Can you imagine? I mentioned Sunday that statue would be visible especially in that topography, flat, for over 11 miles. Can you imagine standing close to that, how small you would feel? I love standing next to the ocean because it makes you feel really small.
Right.
And sometimes we need that. So I think there was the intentionality of his leaders, and he also wanted them to display what the commoner would follow. So here's a thought that I had never thought of before, and you may have. So where was the king during this situation? Because if they had to go and tell him that they didn't bow, if he were there, he would have seen it. It's interesting to me. Why are we not told if he was there? And we're told really more that he wasn't. I wonder why. Why? I don't think there's an answer, but It's very interesting to me. You spend all this time, all this money, all this effort,
But he's not at the grand opening.
yeah, you don't show up for the ribbon cutting.
Hmm.
That's really it's interesting to me. So,
Yeah, I wonder what he was doing. I wonder if he could see it from. I wonder if he could see the statue from like his throne or something. I don't know how the setup was.
well, now that's a very logical thought because of the size,
Yeah.
and I believe it would be in close enough proximity. And if you're going to do it, can you imagine building this thing where you can sit on your throne and look at yourself? Well, there's a big bolt of lightning. That would be.
I wonder if he didn't show up because he was worried about what Shadrach and Benny did. If more people were going to do it, like if he's there and he unleashes the statue and then people don't bow down, what do you do then? I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating.
Right. So here's another question. If Daniel were there at this event,
Yeah.
one, would it have made a difference?
Yeah.
Now, we talked Sunday. I have absolutely unequivocal confidence that Daniel would not have bowed to this.
Maybe he made sure Daniel wasn't at the event.
That's possible. He could have dispatched him. Now, what's interesting is this. Like I said, it was 20 years between the two events, the two chapter events. I'm not saying it took all 20 years to build this statue, but it took a time. So
Right.
Daniel was aware of this process. What I can't help but wonder is, was he aware of what this individual responsibility or demand was going to be?
Right. It wasn't just that it was going to turn not into just a statue, but an idol.
Right.
Gotcha.
Because statues were everywhere and all
Sure.
that, but so we'll never know, inquiring minds. But I thought about would things have been different? But Daniel knew this statue was going to be built. I wonder if he knew that it was going to be turned into an idol, or perhaps, maybe, I don't know, maybe that was done in his absence. But what we see here, and we've mentioned it last week, and I'm going to keep tapping that nail till it's nice and flush to the wood. Leadership is influence. Nebuchadnezzar wanted his leaders to display what he wanted out of his subjects.
Sure.
And, we're all leaders. We all follow, we all lead someone somewhere, and we need to be ever, ever mindful of that. And so, they strike up the band, and everyone's supposed to, put their nose in the dirt, and the three guys don't. And, it's interesting. You and I have had this conversation. A lot of people talk a whole lot of smack about what they would and they wouldn't do. Well, first of all, until you're there, you don't know.
Right.
Right? But if we go back to our three keys that we had mentioned, first, if you've submitted your mind, your heart, and your will to the Lord, if you have made preparations, if you're discipled, if you're maturing, if your faith is widening and deepening, and then lastly, then and only then, are you ready to answer the execution question? What can I do? What would I do in those situations? I mean, we could play the what if all day long, and we can purpose to what we want to do if we were placed in that. But I ask us all to be conscientious of making bold, braggadocious statements, because, like I said, you don't know until you get there. And two, what if the Lord makes you cash that check?
Yeah, that's the thing. Do you really? Yeah, it's easy to talk is cheap, as they say. But when push comes to shove, and nobody wants to be in that situation. I always think of you know that photo where it's Hitler's giving a speech and the whole crowd's doing the Hail Hitler thing or whatever, and there's a one dude that's just like standing there with his arms crossed. And to me, those stories always are connected. Just this, because how many other Jews bowed down?
Right.
Like if they had bowed down too, as leaders, obviously they're looked up to not just by the Babylonians but by the other Jews. If they had bowed down too, and you're looking around as a regular Jewish man or woman, and you go, oh well, Shadrach and Benny, they're bowing down, and our leaders are bowing down. Let's just do this. Yes. I mean that might have been it. That might have been the religion. You know what I mean?
Yes. And another rabbit hole I go down is it's hard for me to just openly accept that these were the only 3 Jews in the crowd.
Oh yeah, no way.
So yeah, I think there were Jews, and like I said, you don't know till you get there. When it's your life, we can rationalize a lot of things,
Yeah.
and
when you've got a family, all that other stuff, and you're just trying to survive.
And you can rationalize. Well, I'm not bowing in my heart. It's just my posture, right?
Yep.
So the 3 guys, they stand up, they stand out, and they get tattled on, and they're called in, on the carpet. But one of the things we touched on was, what is it? What platform? What command? What biblical truth was it that they were not willing to bend, break, or bow on? And we find it's simple, it's brief. Jesus quoted it himself in Exodus 20. He says, "You shall have no other gods before me." Now, having them worship his statue, I mean, that's what we're saying, right? In our culture today, now I've been a lot of places that have a lot of statues, and I've seen people worship statues. I've seen people worship icons. I've seen it all. In our culture, the challenge that we face are the other gods and idols that we can allow into our lives, and we touched on that. A person, a possession, a passion, a position, or a pursuit. Any number of those, or a combination platter of them, can become a god to us if we're not careful.
Look at that alliteration.
You like that? 5 for 5.
And I think, sometimes it's easy for us to dismiss, and we go, oh, your idols today. You're like, oh, yeah, because it'd be easier if they literally were idols, because then you can just point to them. But they're so subtle now. They're couched in goodness. They're couched in all this other stuff that, and they're pursued and worshipped by other Christians, so that it's harder to identify. But I think you're right. I mean, it can be any of those things. I mean, anything that causes you to turn from Jesus, anything that causes you to lose your witness, anything that takes your attention and your heart's desires off of Him, and it could be literally anything.
Well, I'm going to go so far as to say this. It's not just the things in the world.
Sure.
There are things inside of church life.
Right.
Our denominations are fine. I'm not saying they're wrong.
Sure.
They have their place. They have their purpose. But when you hold a denomination up over brothers and sisters in the faith, or that you become so ego driven by I'm this or I'm that, that's problematic. What are some other things that you think can run that risk inside the church life?
Well, I think it's just that people go like, well, I'm adding Jesus to my life. I have this life, and now my life's kind of crazy and all this stuff. You know what? I think it'd be better if I had Jesus kind of alongside me, if I had church alongside me. So I've got church. I'm going to add church to all my other stuff,
yep.
And then I do that. And it's anytime church, God, Jesus is just along for the ride of your life, then you've got idols, because that means you've got other things of as high or whatever as Jesus, church, all these other things. And so it's like either, and we do a poor job, I think, or not us, but sometimes the church does a poor job in clearly stating either the goal of your life is to know him and make him known, whatever phrase we want to use, or it's not. That's it. Like either the passion of your life is to love Jesus and to love other people, to go into the world and make disciples. Either that's the purpose, you're an ambassador of Christ, you're the living sacrifice, you're the temple, the priest, all those things. Either that's what you're called to do and what you're trying to live your life to do, or you're doing the opposite. There's no like, I don't know, right now I'm really into spirituality, I'm really into Jesus right now, or maybe I'm kind of backing off and I've got this stuff at work, or I'm going to take a break. That's not how this works. You're either all on or you're all off.
And, it's interesting. You made a great illustration about, if we're not careful, people want to do an add-on, an add-on. Jesus is an add-on to my life. Well, it's kind of like this book. If I were to lay this book on the coffee table that we have in our opening slide, it would stand out. But if I take this same book and I put it up on this bookshelf,
it blends in.
You might be hard pressed to even find it again. And that is the challenge we all face in early faith, mid faith, even aged faith. Is you're exactly right. We are saved by grace that we might be transformed into the image of His Son. And in that transformation, we find passion, purpose in knowing Him and making Him known.
Amen.
And if that is not the point of the spear of your life, now would be a great time to start taking inventory. That doesn't mean you have to give away everything. But if there's anything that takes precedent over that, that needs to be addressed. And, we always talk about idols and the people of the world and yada, yada. But, we as Christians, if we're not careful, just like these Hebrews, if you're not careful, and quite truthfully, you can raise anything up. So,
like you always say, everybody you come in contact with in prison, all this, they all know Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
They all know Jesus. But
yes.
Do they know Jesus?
I always love the people when you ask them, do you know Jesus? Oh, well, I'm a Methodist.
Yeah.
No, I didn't ask you that.
Yeah.
And I always love, have you been born again? Do have Jesus? Oh, yeah, we're good. Yeah. Well, tell me about that.
Yeah. Like it's a box they've checked. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jesus, check. I've got American Jesus. Let's move on.
Yeah. On more than one occasion, I've said, well, I don't think you're that good.
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you the time and the place where I met Christ on His terms. Now, when you're a little kid, it could get a little foggy, whether it was VBS or Sunday school or, something. But you should know that if you. Yep. And there should be a change. You should see fruit of that. So, it's so interesting. They came in, they ratted out the boys, and the king gets all angry again, which at least he's being consistent in that. And he calls them in. He says, "Okay, guys, I'm going to be really kind and gracious here because, we kind of gave you instructions the first time, but it was, it was bow and burn or burn. I mean, and." Again, we can't say what we would do until we get there. We can prepare for what we hope never happens. But our challenge as modern-day believers, as Western believers, isn't that we'll be called for it all at once, but it's a slow process of negotiation. That's the danger.
Yeah.
That is the real danger in the American church culture because we begin to negotiate things. And if we're not careful, we will find ourselves someplace that we didn't really intend to be.
It's like
Now
it's like CJ. Every day he pushed those boundaries. Every day he tries to get under the gate. Every day,
yes,
your kids, and that's the same thing with the world as an American Christian. Every single day they're going to try and distract you as much as possible. Every single day they're going to try to pull you away as much as possible. It's they don't take a day off. Our culture doesn't take a day off. So like you said, it's an everyday slow burn, dying to yourself, picking up that cross every day.
And there's two sides of the fence inside the church tent. There's those things that God has forbidden.
Right.
And to do those is knowingly and willfully sin. The other is inside the fence of liberty, when you abuse, misuse, or mislead. It's not just what God has clearly forbidden to us, but even inside the fence of our freedom, we run the risk of negotiating things to a detrimental, sinful level.
Right.
And we really need to be conscientious, mindful of that, and we really need to lovingly hold each other into account of that, because it's a slow burn, and you can find yourself in a place. So let's close with this. This is some of the most deep water faith that you'll see. They respond to him, and just as clear, honest, humble. Our God is able to deliver us. We will not bend.
Amen.
We won't. We're not going to do it. We're not going to, kind of lean over, or, well, how about we just take a knee? How about that? We'll just meet halfway, right? They said, no, we're in no way, shape, or form even going to give the appearance of what you're calling us to do. No. And our God is able to deliver us. Amen. Now, I had someone ask me this week, and I would be remiss if I didn't toss this in. The Bible doesn't tell us this, so we don't know. So this is not biblical fact. This is a consideration. What if these three men could see Jesus in the fire before? What if they saw him? And not only did they have faith, but then their faith was bolstered because he was already there. Now like I said, this is just fun for ponderance. And someone brought this question to me. I can't own it. And but
well, how about this question? What if they get thrown in the fire and they burn?
Yes. And what I'm going to tell you, this is a gutsy statement. Our God's able, but even if he doesn't.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? The even if he doesn't, that's the key.
See that that is the challenge, especially in us in the Western Church. The truth is that God's sovereignty and works through the loss at times of a human life. That sounds terrible. But we know that's the case. Why? Because we have Jesus. He lost his human life. Why? So that God could forgive us of our sins. There are times when God will allow. Why? Because we're not able to see the ramifications. And I'm going to choose my own life here because this is really touchy.
Sure.
My mother's death was a horrible decision. It was a terrible tragedy, and I regret it. I do every day. I'm reminded every day of that series of events. But from there, my life course altered. So the question we could ponder is this: is if through the circumstances of life and choices and sin and all those things, if my life hadn't changed course there, would I be the man I am today? And if I were not the man I am today, then what about all of the influence that God's allowed me to have over 33 years?
Yeah.
You know, if you're watching this and you've been at ALF more than like Sunday, you know, whatever my value has been into your life, what if that was all gone?
Yeah.
God, and I had to come to grips with this early, and I thank the Lord. God did not kill my mother.
Right.
But God can work through that. And so what an incredible statement. Our God's able, but even if he doesn't. And so not only is it a testimony of faith, but it also reminds us that as good as this is, and it's good, it's not heaven.
Amen.
The best is yet to come, brothers and sisters. Don't get so lost in the life that we live, as good as it is, that we forget the best is yet to come. And I, you know, I've said if I don't get to go in the rapture, which is my hope, I just beg that I'm doing something good for God when my life ends. I don't know what it'll be. I've been overseas. I've been in circumstances where I remember praying, you know, staring into the darkness. And I said, Lord, if someone takes a shot at me, let them get all of me.
Right.
And I could accept that, because what would God do through that? I don't know. It would be his sovereign will. So what an incredible statement of faith. And I want to be able to say that, and I want everyone in our church to be able to say that, but you don't get there overnight, and you certainly don't get there by accident. And so that's part of the process. And so, like I said Sunday, that is a difficult prayer to pray.
Oh, yeah.
Because one, you know what it might cost you, and two, you know what you don't want it to cost you. And that might be a great place to start evaluating what could be more than it should be, right? It's such a simple story, such a powerful statement of faith. And then, you know, here in a couple of weeks, we get to see God do what God does. And it's great. Closing thoughts, cries of outrage, fits of anger.
I love it. You know, I think that even if he doesn't, I think it's the key for us, because our culture, we're all like high on God. God's great until he does something or doesn't do something we want him to do, and then it's easy to go. So that the whole, even if he doesn't, I mean, that should be us. You know, like you said, Jesus said, "What can man do to you? The worst a man can do is send you to Jesus." And we know that God's got our lifespan planned, so man can't do anything.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So, except God's will.
Well, I'm excited about Sunday, because in our auditorium class, we are beginning in earnest our new teaching platform. And if you weren't here Sunday, I want to invite you here for Bible study hour, 9:00. We've got a place for everybody. And we're going to be looking at Palm Sunday. No, I'm sorry. That's not true. I'm a liar. In the auditorium class, which I'll be leading this week, we're going to be looking at Good Friday.
That's right.
What makes that Friday good? That's a weird name. Have you ever wondered? Well, that's a weird name.
Good Friday.
Well, we're going to be looking at the topic of Good Friday. So, love to have you here. Now, it's a motivation if it's possible for you to get here, because that's only reserved for the in-person crowd. We can't duplicate it. So we never want you to feel like you're missing out. But so get here if you can. That would be great. And if not, please, by all means, be with us digitally, because all of our digital ministries will remain just the same. So we're excited about that. Well, Joshua, I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you for your insight. And I'm going to let you sing us home.
You better get home before it rains.
Well, I'm going to get out in between the cloudbursts, and 'cause I'm just so sweet, I might melt.
All right, brother. I'll see you tomorrow.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Love you guys.
All right. We're going to just sing one verse and the refrain of I Stand Amazed. And with the ransomed in glory, his face I at last shall see. 'Twill be my joy through the ages to sing of his love for me, singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. Good night, guys. Stay safe. We'll see you Sunday.